With Sean talks a lot on the phone and on the TV with people and stuff, and I'll be in the I was like a sex slave okay. After days of extreme tension in the courtroom with the testimony of Cassie Ventura, Diddy's ex-lover, today's trial heated up as Jonathan Audi officially took the stand. All eyes were on Audi as he recounted every horrific detail about the torture chamber in Diddy's mansion, where victims were imprisoned, tortured under glaring red lights, and loud music to drown out their screams. In a stunned moment, Audi looked toward Diddy and said with bitter resolve, "I was his sex slave. I heard a lot of things, each word cut like a knife," into the glamorous image of the powerful music mogul. Meanwhile, Diddy sat silently, his face pale, hands covering his eyes, as if trying to escape the harsh truth being brutally exposed in the name of justice. The details read aloud in court froze the atmosphere. According to many witnesses, Diddy covered his face when the most gruesome parts were mentioned. So what exactly did the testimony say, and could this be the fatal blow that could bring down Diddy's entire empire? Listen closely to the testimony of the accused slave that shook the courtroom and the world in the video below. 1. Audi's testimony shakes the courts. The Manhattan federal courtroom was suffocating and intensely tense yesterday when a crucial witness, Diddy's slave, took the stand. Jonathan Audi, a name once dismissed as fictional and delusional, has now become the focal point when Cassie Ventura affirmed under oath that Audi had been hired repeatedly to commit depraved acts. Everything shifted. The story of Jonathan Audi had been buried by the world in 2018. He caused chaos at former President Donald Trump's hotel in Florida and was arrested for a shooting at that time. Audi claimed he was Diddy's sex slave, a claim mocked as paranoia, but now it's different. Now is the time after the federal raid on Diddy's home. Now is the moment when an indictment for trafficking in adult services has been filed. And now all eyes turned back to Jonathan Audi. In an orange prison jumpsuit, hands cuffed in front, Audi entered like a ghost, emerging from Hollywood parties he had always tried to forget. Audi, once a stripper, once considered a weirdo due to the Doral shooting, now was the key witness in a trial that could permanently bury Sean Diddy Combs' empire. Judge Aaron Subramanian looked at Audi from the bench, then glanced at Diddy. "The court demands honesty, not sensationalism," he said. "But if there is any truth that has been hidden, today is the day it needs to come to light. Please tell the whole truth." Diddy sat behind expressionless lips, pressed tight. The man once dubbed the Bad Boy King seemed trapped on his own throne, surrounded by lawyers, cameras, and the silent contempt of the public. Audi took a deep breath, eyes bloodshot, staring straight at Diddy, voice trembling but resolute. "I'm here to tell the truth," he began. "Sean Combs, or Diddy, destroyed my life. He is a monster. In 2018, at the Trump International Hotel, I fired a gun, but not because I wanted to. It was because Diddy manipulated me, controlled my mind. He used some technology. I don't know exactly what it was, but it made me hear his voice in my head, quesadillas, ordering me to do terrible things to cover up his crimes." The courtroom murmured, some shaking their heads, whispering about conspiracy theories. Judge Subramanian banged his gavel, calling for order. "Mr. Audi, please focus on specific facts," she said sternly. "You say Mr. Combs manipulated you. Do you have any evidence?" Audi leaned forward, voice rising, filled with emotion. "Evidence? The evidence is my ruined life. He made me a mental slave. He threw lavish parties, gave me strange substances, and then I started hearing his voice in my head. He ordered me to protect his secrets about trafficking, about girls forced into it. He threatened to destroy me and my family if I didn't obey." Audi continued, slower but haunting. "I'm not here to play the victim," he said. "I'm here to tell what really happened behind doors locked by money and power." He described being invited to a party at Diddy's bare mansion, pink lights, deep house music echoing through hallways, scantily clad models moving like ghosts, and drugs handed out like mint candy. "I thought I was in a movie, but it was actually a ritual, a selection ceremony for me to soon become a sex slave." Combs didn't ask. Audi said, eyes locked on the defendant. He just nodded. Those around understood. "I was forced to do adult things with a woman in front of more than 10 others. Cassie stood there laughing. I thought she was a victim, but then she was a part of it too." He swallowed hard, chest heaving. "I was filmed, threatened with death if I spoke. And every time I refused, money was transferred to my account. As a reminder, I was owned." At the prosecutor's bench, Emily Johnson nodded gently. She presented evidence of steady money transfers from shell companies linked to Combs. A $5 million NDA signed by Audi was shown. I signed it because I was scared, Audi said. I signed because I thought I had no way out. Diddy's defense lawyer Brian Steels jumped up to object, calling the witness mentally unstable with a history of delusions. But Judge Subramanian signaled for silence. The court sees no evidence that he is lying, and if what he says is true, it is shocking. Audi went on about a night. He said he was drugged. I woke up naked, hands tied, and Diddy was watching me through his phone camera. He smiled, not loudly, just quietly, and said, "You belong to me now, Jonathan. You have nothing left to run from." The courtroom held its breath. Diddy's face turned pale, though he tried to keep a cold look, but his wrists twitched, his legs shook slightly. For the first time in his career, he knew he no longer controlled the narrative. The climax came when Audi said, "I almost harmed myself. I wrote a suicide note, but then I remembered others drowning like me, and I knew if I stayed silent, he would keep going. He would keep using music, money, and power to coerce, film, humiliate, and silence everyone." His voice almost broke, but did not collapse. It was the voice of a man who had lost everything and feared nothing anymore. Right after that, Diddy suddenly stood up, voice low and furious. "This is ridiculous. I don't even know this guy. He's crazy." "Your Honor," his lawyer hurriedly pulled him down. Judge Aaron banged the gavel hard. "Mr. Combs, sit down. I will not tolerate outbursts in this courtroom. Mr. Audi, do you have documents or witnesses to support your testimony?" Audi hesitated, eyes desperate. "I only have my memories, but I know the truth. Look at other lawsuits. Cassie, Gina, they say similar things." Whispering rose again, but Diddy's lawyers appeared confident, as if this testimony was not threatening. Diddy's lawyer Brian Steeler stood, voice sarcastic. "Your Honor, this is a fanciful story from a convicted violent man with a history of mental instability. No evidence, no witnesses, no documents verify Mr. Combs ever met Mr. Audi. This is a desperate attempt to escape guilt." Diddy whispered to Carter loud enough for some to hear, "He's crazy. I'm not involved." The judge said little. He just looked down from the bench with a piercing gaze. "If even a fraction of what Mr. Audi says is true," he said slowly, "we face a criminal case that may be the biggest downfall in American entertainment history." He tapped the gavel lightly. "The trial will recess for 30 minutes. The court needs to review recordings and documents." Diddy sat motionless, eyes staring through the walls. Only a cold courtroom remained, and a testimony that tore apart the velvet curtain of power and lust he thought would protect him forever. "You know Sean Combs, Puff Daddy P. Diddy, whatever the name today, that image no longer exists." To the trial continued with the Freakoff party. After the lunch break, the courtroom at the Miami Supreme Court on June 19, 2025, once again sank into a stifling atmosphere. Reporters, pens in hand, were ready to record every testimony. The sketch showed Sean Diddy Combs sitting upright, his eyes cold, but hands tightly clasped, revealing discreet tension. Jonathan Audi entered the courtroom and began shocking the public by revealing details about the so-called Freakoff parties. Audi said Diddy's Freakoff parties were not just parties, they were sick gatherings where he controlled everything. There were dozens of people, young women, men, celebrities, and even powerful figures I didn't recognize, including names like Tyler Perry, Oprah Winfrey, Leonardo DiCaprio. The victims were drugged, forced to do disgusting things. I saw baby oil being used, not for skincare. They mixed it with some kind of resin, rubbed it on the body to enhance sensations, and reapplied it every 5 hours. Audi continued, his voice rising. Baby oil was poured into unlabeled bottles placed all around the room. He and his accomplices used it to turn participants into slaves. I saw young girls, some looking underage, forced to drink something and have oil rubbed on them. They couldn't resist. I counted at least 20 people in one night forced to do intimate acts to serve Diddy and his guests. I was one of them. Audi bowed his head, voice choked. The judge struck the gavel, voice firm. Mr. Audi, these are serious allegations. You say 20 people were forced. Can you provide names, specific dates, or any evidence? Audi looked up, eyes desperate. I don't remember exact names, Your Honor. He didn't let us know each other, but I remember the date. August 2017, at a villa in Star Island. There were cameras everywhere, but I'm sure he deleted everything. He was always careful. He called those parties Freakoff, because that was where he unleashed his sick nature. Audi went on describing how some of Diddy's villas were not merely lavish playgrounds, but deliberately staged to facilitate perverse entertainment. Debauched parties, forced adult acts, stimulants, and blatant humiliation. They even revealed chilling details. Linen, specially used to soak up blood and bodily fluids, and special air fresheners to cover the foul smells. The scent in the room, she said, always had to be Glade or some special spray, because Diddy wanted the space to smell exactly as he wished. The courtroom fell into tense silence as Audi recounted being forced to participate in these sick charades with sheets soaked in urine and other fluids. These brutal details made many jurors visibly uncomfortable. Some turned away, unable to keep looking at Audi as she calmly narrated. That chilling sensation was becoming the prosecution's strongest weapon. A picture of organized repeated abuse, not spontaneous or accidental behavior. Even more noteworthy, Jonathan Audi's ex-wife unexpectedly spoke out. She affirmed that Audi still fears Diddy to this day, and that what happened left him with deep psychological scars. This testimony, coming from outside the courtroom, further reinforced the argument that Diddy not only manipulated, but also threatened his victims for years. 3. The defense attorney's fierce counterattack. While Jonathan Audi continued his testimony, like a knife, slicing deep into Diddy's mask of power, the defendant's defense team began their counter-offensive. They knew well that if Audi's account stood unchallenged, Diddy's entire defense line would collapse like a house of cards set aflame. The lead lawyer, a silver-haired man with eyes sharp as a surgical blade, stepped forward, opening a thick file containing Audi's tangled past. "Your Honor," he said, with a tone tinged with disdain, "we are hearing accusations from a man who once stormed the Trump National Doral Hotel wielding a semi-automatic handgun, firing shots into the ceiling, shouting incoherent things about God and the government. Is this a credible witness?" A man previously declared mentally unstable. Whispered murmurs rose from the gallery, and for a moment Audi lowered his head. But then he looked up. "Yes," Audi said, "I was a wreck. I was insane, panicked, lost, because of what I endured, but that is not evidence against me. It is the consequence of the hell that Mr. Combs and his apparatus shoved me into." He stared directly at the jury. "I survived that shooting incident. No one else was hurt. Only I was arrested. But have you ever asked why an ordinary person would snap like that? I'm telling the truth, and no one believed me. Then now I'm telling the truth again, and I don't want pity. I just want to be heard." Diddy's lawyers smirked, but the smile barely concealed their discomfort. They aimed to turn Audi into the weakest link, a madman, a smokeock screen, concealing the truth. A man once investigated by the FBI, who quietly vanished from the media as if he had never existed. But the problem was, the truth no longer stood alone. Cassie Ventura, Diddy's ex-lover, and a victim who filed suit against him at the end of 2023, had told horrifying details that almost perfectly matched Audi's. She also described secret rooms, nights, drugged, filmed and threatened, and although the two had never met, Cassie's and Audi's stories aligned at the most terrifying points. Cameras hidden inside fireplaces, bodyguards lurking behind doors, NDAs like paper news, and especially the chilling phrase both recalled, "You belong to me." Not only Cassie, but Audi's testimony also matched what Philip Pines, former senior executive assistant to Diddy from December 2019 to December 2021, had publicly stated in lawsuits and interviews. Pines painted a picture of Diddy as a controlling figure who used power to force those around him into obedience and loyalty. Pines recounted the fateful night he was allegedly coerced by Diddy into adult acts with a woman at an off-books Freakoff party. The words Pines still remembered vividly were, "Prove your loyalty to me, King." According to his lawsuit, this coercion was part of a twisted, violent culture surrounding the music mogul where assistants were forced to offer not only their time but their bodies. Pines also asserted he often had to clean up after multi-day debauched parties, where alcohol, cannabis, ketamine, baby oil, and astroglide were used like stage props. Candles and incense, pungent smells, and music all contributed to a frenzied atmosphere he described as dark rituals, where moral boundaries were erased. These testimonies, once dismissed as peripheral to the criminal case, were now considered key because they reflected an alleged ongoing and systematic pattern of behavior. In the courtroom, the jury no longer looked at Audi with suspicion, they listened. They began to piece together the puzzle. One witness might be mistaken, but witnesses whose stories matched down to details, no outsider could. Imagine marked the point where denial began to falter. Legal observers followed the trial like a live chess match, with the prosecution playing masterfully. They did not reveal all their pieces at once. They were patient, starting with Audi, the witness everyone expected to be discredited. But then they baited out more financial evidence. Bank statements from shell companies in the Cayman Islands recovered footage from deleted servers. Internal emails between managers and bodyguards discussing a weekend cleanup schedule. They were not just building a case, they were constructing a pattern of crime, a true crime chain from recruitment exploitation, control filming threatening to finally paying hush money. Each step had witnesses, documents, and logic. Audi was no longer a madman, he was the first to dare reveal the blueprint of an entire machine dominating bodies and minds. Diddy, the man who once controlled stages, charts, media, and rivals, now seemed adrift in a flood, and for the first time no life preserver could save his wrongful acts. For revelation about the torture room, the subsequent discussion about the so-called torture rooms sent shockwaves throughout the courtroom. What was once seen as a messy scandal revolving around celebrities was no longer simply backstage gossip. It had become far darker and more chilling. The prosecutors shifted their focus onto these spaces, arguing that they were not merely rooms catering to the consensual adult pleasures, but were deliberate traps. Places where abuse, manipulation and power were pushed to the extreme. They said this was not impulsive behavior or a passing unusual lifestyle, it was a system, a chain of organizations designed to operate in the shadows disguised by the bright lights of the music industry, but in reality, a human trap network. According to federal agencies, these rooms did not exist independently. They were part of a larger pattern and underground facility that sent many people into hell, while outwardly shining with fame and money. And what made the jury shudder was when previous statements from Audi, a witness once suspected, began to precisely align with what Cassie and others were testifying. Jonathan Audi declared, "I call them torture rooms," Audi said, eyes fixed on the jury, because no other word can describe them better. There is no consent, no limits, only fear, control, and punishment. For a moment, the courtroom was nearly silent. No one wrote notes, no one breathed heavily, even Diddy slowly clasped his hands, as if sensing the most dangerous phase of the trial had arrived. According to Audi, these rooms were designed with the purpose, not just of sex, but of absolute control. The doors are soundproofed. There are blind spots for cameras, where what happens will never be recorded. There are fingerprint lock systems too. Adjust lighting temperature, as if someone wants to control everything from sensation to the victim's biological reflexes. He paused, then said slowly, "I know, because I was once locked in a room like that. I screamed, I vomited, and then I became numb. That's when I understood the goal isn't to cause pain, but to erase the person inside me." The prosecutors immediately seized this testimony to expand the case. They presented architectural blueprints from a Los Angeles mansion once owned by a company under Diddy's name. The plans showed 3 rooms deep in the basement, windowless, with separate air conditioning systems, and 2 emergency exits, disabled. A technical expert was called to confirm that this design is not intended for ordinary civilian use. They never said the word torture aloud, but the entire courtroom felt it. Audi continued that these rooms were often given nicknames, like Studio X, or the quiet room, sounding artistic, but actually places where cruel psychological experiments took place. Once he said, "They made me stand for 10 hours straight, with headphones playing the same music loop, the hook of a Diddy song, until I wanted to smash my head against the wall." A female juror raised her hand to cover her mouth. The man beside her lowered her head. No one looked at the defendant. The prosecution pressed on, leaving no room for the echoes to fade. "This is no longer an adult scandal," they said. "In court, this is the act of organizing and maintaining a system of control and abuse. Not for satisfying lust, but for consolidating power and silencing voices." Federal investigators asserted that these rooms were not limited to one address. They existed in Miami, New York, and at a mansion in Antigua that Diddy has since sold. Evidence collected from maintenance workers, soundproofing material invoices, and house usage schedules for art testing sessions all pointed to one fact: the system was premeditated, cold, and deliberate. Audi ended his testimony with a sentence that made everyone shudder. "I used to think hell was an abstract place, but no, I was trapped in it. It has a specific address, it has an owner's name, and today that person is sitting right in front of me." Now, allegations of sexual slavery were no longer a metaphor. Prosecutors argued that this was not a matter of private preference or personal pleasure, but a sophisticated form of human trafficking cleverly concealed behind stage lights and the veneer of power in the entertainment industry. The question now was, do the mentioned video recordings reinforce this chain of accusations? Shifting from the shocking testimony about the torture rooms, attention turned to the bizarre videos that prosecutors claimed to have collected. Though the public has not yet seen them, the prosecutors' descriptions alone silenced the entire courtroom. 5 sensitive videos, according to official records. There are as many as 9 videos capturing the parties that the prosecution calls evidence of organized abuse. The judge ordered that only the jury be allowed to view the footage through a separate screen installed directly in front of them to prevent anyone else in the courtroom from seeing the content. A clear tension enveloped the trial following this ruling. Diddy's side rebutted, saying that the videos only recorded consensual acts between adults. But the prosecutor emphasized, nothing is voluntary when coercion and psychological control are involved. One of the most troubling accusations raised by Cassie was that these sexual encounters were often recorded by Diddy without full consent, and those recordings later became tools of intimidation, forcing victims to remain silent and obedient. If this detail is verified, it would become the most crucial piece in the prosecution strategy. The allegations surrounding the bizarre parties Cassie described were not impulsive or random acts of violence. According to her testimony, they followed a clear pattern ordered like a haunting ritual. It began with verbal description, where Cassie was forced to recount in detail what was about to happen. Then came baby oil application, followed by oral activities that she said were often rushed to finish quickly. Finally came adult intercourse, sometimes with another man watching, sometimes with that man participating. However, one of the most shocking pieces of video evidence did not come from private rooms, but from a public hotel hallway. The now famous 2016 surveillance footage recorded Diddy chasing Cassie, knocking her to the ground, kicking her, and dragging her back to the room. This clip, released by CNN in 2024, was shown repeatedly to the jury and became undeniable visual proof of the public violence. The prosecutor argues stemmed from a long-term control mechanism behind the scenes. Today, a former security employee from the hotel in that video testified. He recounted that upon arrival, Cassie repeatedly begged to leave, while Diddy insisted she was not going anywhere. This testimony not only confirmed the footage, but also completed the picture of a coercion pattern that extended beyond closed rooms into public life as part of a comprehensive control system. The horror of these videos lies not in their bizarre nature, but in how they portray Cassie's clear downward spiral from initial participation. Everything gradually turned into submission, psychological numbness, and then humiliation. Some witnesses, including hired male escorts, testified that the encounters became increasingly extreme, from being urinated on to other humiliations, like being forced to crawl or filmed against her will. In one of the most serious accusations raised today, the federal government said Diddy once ordered a male escort to urinate on Cassie. This escort also testified he once witnessed Diddy throwing a bottle at Cassie's face and heard beating sounds from the next room. The incident caused him erectile dysfunction and forced him to quit. He recalled a terrifying scene where Diddy grabbed Cassie by the hair and dragged her from a computer chair to the bedroom despite her kicking, screaming, and crying. Although not all videos have been publicly released, prosecutors insist that behind what was filmed lies an entire system operating quietly like an underground organization. According to them, this was not chaos caused by desire, it was an organized campaign where hotels were pre-booked, rooms arranged, with the intent of control, and male escorts were not randomly chosen. They were brought from other states, almost like a human trafficking network. One especially notable detail was the use of drugs as a manipulation tool. According to testimony, the party atmosphere was set up to make participants lose vigilance. even the ability to resist. Cassie testified that there were nights she couldn't say no, even with her eyes she did not remember what she had done, only that she was no longer herself. The defense vehemently pushed back, painting a completely different picture. They claimed Cassie fell deep into drug use by her own choice, even using more than Diddy, according to them. Diddy was not the addict supplier, but someone trying to help her quit a break, rather than a gas pedal. Their narrative was about a lost woman saved by a kind man, not a victim of a cruel manipulator. Prosecutors would not relent. They provided evidence that Diddy was the one who connected Cassie to her initial drug contacts. They described this as another control method, keeping her dependent. They also revealed a shocking detail. Diddy was suspected of overdose around the same time Whitney Houston died, emphasizing that the addiction problem was not only Cassie's. Some of the most disturbing videos today do not come from private meetings or secret evidence but directly from social media and previous interviews with Diddy. What was once seen as quirky or just joking is now dissected in legal detail. Detail clips where Diddy made cryptic remarks about his party that once drew laughs are now haunting. In one clip, he says, "Do you misunderstand me? There's no misunderstanding. We're going to hear about my party. They will shut them down. They will arrest me." Another video shown in court showed Diddy at a charity auction where he offered a night out, with the winner adding that the person would wake up next to him. Previously, such remarks might have been seen as funny or bizarre, but in the context of current accusations, those words send chills down the spine. The question arises, are these clips truly credible evidence, or just selectively extracted footage to create a sensational story? When allegations about torture rooms surfaced, everything went far beyond a usual celebrity scandal. Now this is a nationwide legal storm. Why did the judge firmly refuse to release Diddy on Thursday, May 8, 2025? What seemed like a routine pre-trial hearing quickly became a pivotal turning point in this historic lawsuit. Judge Erin Subramonian witnessed and presided over one of the tensest and most shocking moments since jury selection began on May 5. According to the schedule, the official trial was set to open with opening statements on Monday, May 12, and prosecutors expected the process to last between 8 to 10 weeks. However, even before formal testimony began, the court was rocked by information that Diddy might have lied under oath during previous hearings. The atmosphere in the courtroom, already stifling with heavy media presence, immediately shifted to extreme tension. During the decisive hearing, to finalize the list of 45 potential jurors, prosecutors presented evidence directly contradicting what Combs had previously asserted in court. Specifically, they accused him of deliberately approaching and influencing witnesses, something Diddy had repeatedly denied under oath. This was a crucial focal point of the entire case, previously referenced in earlier bail hearings. The biggest shock came when prosecutors revealed that while detained at the Metropolitan Detention Center, MDC, Brooklyn, Combs used the phone accounts of at least 8 other inmates to make three-way calls, a method to circumvent rules and contact people not on the approved contact list. This not only violated prison regulations, but was viewed as intentional concealment and manipulation. It did not stop there. One of the potential jurors recently selected to the list was an employee at the very prison where Diddy was held. This revelation caused the courtroom to erupt. Some even laughed at the absurd and ironic coincidence. Others suspected whether this person had been bribed or promised something to influence the trial. Judge Subramonian's reaction was swift and decisive. He immediately dismissed that juror from the panel and took a stricter step, reprimanding both the prosecution and defense teams for failing to thoroughly vet potential jurors. The courtroom fell into silence as he emphasized the seriousness of the accusations and the high standards required for justice. But the matter did not end there. Prosecutors continued to present evidence that Combs not only lied regarding the juror matter, but also actively deceived the court about contacts with key witnesses. They said he had attempted to approach people who had received subpoenas from the jury, an act considered a serious obstruction of justice. With a series of deliberate actions, Diddy now faces charges of perjury, obstruction of justice, and witness tampering, all offenses that could push his sentence far beyond what the public had imagined. As the official trial begins, one thing is certain: the legal atmosphere is becoming fierce, and all eyes are on the mogul once hailed as the mightiest king of the music industry. If these charges are proven, Diddy may not only face life imprisonment, but also witness the total collapse of his reputation, legacy, and the entire empire he painstakingly built over 3 decades. This legal earthquake is shaking the hip-hop world and raising profound questions about power, immunity, and justice in Hollywood. Based on documents submitted by the prosecution, Sean Diddy Combs was accused of contacting Keener Harper, a former associate, 58 times within just 4 days, starting September 10, 2024. Immediately after dawn, Richard filed a lawsuit accusing assault and other serious misconduct. The total number of calls between Combs and Harper was reported to reach 128, before abruptly ending on September 14 of the same year. Emily Johnson, one of the lead prosecutors, asserted in court that these communications were not merely personal, but contained manipulative elements. She said Combs tried to enlist Harper's help, build rapport, and convince the victim that they had voluntarily participated in adult activities, with a clear implication of continuing financial support as a covert exchange. Johnson further accused Combs of using intermediaries to spread misinformation aimed at psychologically manipulating witnesses, an act deemed a blatant interference with the legal process. If proven, these are not only evidence of wrongdoing, but could constitute serious obstruction of justice charges. Combs' previous denial of bail, due to risks of witness tampering, is no longer surprising at the November 27, 2024 hearing. Judge Aaron Subramanian cited evidence of his violent tendencies and prison regulation violations related to unauthorized communications. Moreover, on September 19, 2024, Judge Robin Tarnowski also denied bail, stating she could not guarantee public safety if Combs was released. This decision was upheld by Judge Andrew Carter Jr. upon appeal, demonstrating the federal court's consistent assessment of the defendant's risk. The case files against companies are increasingly heavy, including serious allegations such as conspiracy to extort, human trafficking, and transporting people for prostitution. Prosecutors allege that from 2008 to 2024, Combs led an organized network involved in forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. However, the developments at the latest hearing made the situation much worse. When the charges of perjury and contempt of court were presented, the severity of the case immediately soared. Federal perjury charges can carry up to 5 years in prison, a penalty separate from the main allegations. More troubling for the defense team was that these revelations could skew jury selection and profoundly impact the entire trial. When Judge Subramanian publicly expressed doubt about Combs' credibility while showing anger toward what he deemed deception and insult to the justice system, the music mogul's predicament worsened. In a rare decision, Judge Subramanian announced he would refer part of the case to federal prosecutors for further examination of additional charges related to perjury and obstruction of justice. Simultaneously, he revoked certain procedural privileges previously extended to Combs' lawyers, emphasizing this was a direct consequence of dishonesty during legal proceedings. The courtroom fell into stunned silence at this ruling. The restriction of procedural privileges deprived K's defense team of important tools in their strategy, putting them at a clear disadvantage before the official trial began. As the hearing ended, no one could deny that what happened had completely changed the trajectory of the case. What was once considered an unpredictable trial had now become nearly uncontrollable, and all legal eyes are now focused on the court's next move. The judge's firm response to the newly disclosed information transformed the courtroom's atmosphere, leaving a deep impression of rigor and a commitment to protecting the transparency of the law. Regardless of how the trial opening on May 12 unfolds, one thing is clear: the judge no longer trusts the defendant's honesty. Diddy's case in Manhattan is now not merely a legal battle between parties, but also carries important legal implications and deeper public significance. When the opening statements take place next Tuesday, all attention will remain fixed on the federal courtroom in Manhattan, where the next chapter in this extraordinary legal saga will be written. The big question is not only whether Sean Diddy Combs will be found guilty or innocent of the serious charges he faces, but also whether the integrity of the judicial process can be maintained against efforts thought to undermine it. What do you think about Audi's testimony, and do you believe justice will be served? Share your thoughts below to keep this story alive. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. See you in the next video.